Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRC Media. Thank you for joining us. We're trying to speak to as many candidates as possible as we head toward the September 6th state primary election. Joining me today is former state representative Leah Allen. She is a Republican candidate for lieutenant governor on September 6th. She's going to be opposed by Kate Campanale. Leah, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
Yes, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and thank you for speaking to the Republican voters of Fall River. I know you're trying your best to reach as many people as possible, and I just appreciate your time being virtual as well. It's good to at least hear from as many candidates as possible. One of the things I want to start off with is I've done this with a lot of the statewide candidates I've spoken to, is that unless a candidate is from a specific region, many people may not know who Leah Allen is. So give us an update of who you are and why you're interested in being the next Attorney General here in Massachusetts.
So, Lieutenant Governor, yes, but I just
Oh, I'm
wanted to
sorry, Lieutenant
quickly
Governor. I'm
say
sorry.
no, that's okay. Statewide candidates, there's a lot of us running. I just want to apologize for being in my car. Like I told you before the show started, my last event ran late, so I didn't intend to do the interview here, but we're making it work, so thank you. So, yes, my name is Leah Allen. I am a North Shore girl, born and raised in Lynn. I live in Danvers now with my husband. He is a union elevator mechanic out of Local 4 Boston, and we have two young kids. I have two kids under 3 years old. And I'm also a former state representative out of City of Peabody, and I am a registered nurse as well. When I first ran for office, I was in my early 20s. I was elected at age 24, and at that time, I was working as a nurse in a nursing home, doing long hours, 16-hour shifts, overnights, just trying to pay off my student loans, trying to pay off my car. And at that time, Deval Patrick was governor, and he was talking about the largest tax increase that Massachusetts had ever seen. And around the same time, it was when all of these reports were coming out that different state departments were just losing millions of dollars, couldn't account for them, had no answers, just it was lost. We don't know where it went. And not only that, but Deval Patrick was wasting money, spending millions of dollars redoing the curtains in his office. And our last three speakers of the House at that time consecutively had been convicted on corruption charges. So I thought, no, there's no way that me and other people in Massachusetts are working this hard and they're going to raise our taxes when they're not even being responsible with the tax money that they're already collecting from us. So with kind of that message of bringing accountability and transparency to the state government and standing up for the taxpayers, I was elected. I flipped a blue seat red in Peabody, and then that was in a special election, and then I went on to win re-election the following year. And I served a few years in the legislature, um, worked on a number of things. Jeff Deal and I actually worked together on repealing the automatic gas tax in Massachusetts, which is the one that would have tied our gas tax to inflation. So it would have gone up every year without a vote in perpetuity. So we were successful on that. At that time, it sounded like a bad idea. This was back in 2014, and I don't think at that time we even had any idea that inflation would be what it is today. So I can only imagine what our gas prices would have been. But these are the kinds of ideas that seem to come out of the legislature, and the kind of things that I think they don't put enough critical thinking into, which is why I
Hmm.
think we need more critical thinking in our executive leadership at the state level. And so when I left politics, I went back to the private sector. I went back to my nursing job. I got a job working in a hospital. I worked at Beverly Hospital for almost 5 years. And then the pandemic hit. And I was pregnant during the pandemic, but I still served on, I guess you would call it, the front lines. I was treating hospitalized COVID patients. There was no vaccine available. And when the government mandates came out saying that I would have to take the COVID vaccine or lose my job, I decided, that's totally wrong. The government should not be making your healthcare decisions for you. It should not be tied to your employment. And I ended up losing my job because I did not take the vaccine. And I know that through the executive orders at the state level, a lot of state workers, including state troopers and workers in the Department of Children and Families, MBTA workers, a lot of our state workers also were forced out of their jobs due to the vaccine mandate. So when I heard Jeff Deal was running for governor, and he said that day one he would rescind the vaccine mandates and rehire all the state workers who lost their jobs, and day two he would fire anyone who thought that was a good idea, I just was really excited by his message of freedom and protecting our liberties, and I decided that I wanted to get involved again. I have two young kids now, and I think that it's more important than ever that we make sure that we are operating under the constraints of the Constitution, and we're protecting people's civil liberties while, letting them, giving them the information and letting them make the best decisions for themselves and their families. So that's kind of what got me back into this race, along with just kind of a lot of the other things I saw happening during the pandemic, as
Mm.
far as closing everything down, closing our small businesses, but letting our big box stores like Walmart and Target were allowed to stay open. Kids were wearing masks for way too long in school, way past when the data was telling us that it was not even effective, and that the kids weren't at risk for spreading or getting all of these things that I didn't agree with and I thought we could do better. And with my background in government, I decided to just throw my hat in again. So,
Yeah.
long story long, that's why I'm
That's
here.
okay. No, that's okay. No, that's a great primer for people to understand where you're coming from in your race for lieutenant governor. You mentioned Jeff Deal, and I believe you had worked with him in the legislature. You had mentioned that, you know, uh, in the primary race, you're running separately as lieutenant governor and governor. But
Mhm.
give us a little more detail on why you and Jeff would make a great ticket as you head into November.
Yeah, so like I said, having served with Jeff in the legislature, there was a small number of us who were actually trying to stand up and bring some change, some positive change to Beacon Hill, and really solve a lot of these problems that our state is facing, try to get a handle on where our money was going, stop a lot of the waste and the fraud in our state government, and just a number of things that really made me have a lot of respect for Jeff is that he was willing to stand up on the tough issues, even when it was not politically convenient or rewarding for him or personally. And even there were people in our own party even that wouldn't stand with Jeff on things that he was elected to do. The people from his district sent him to fight for these things, and when he was trying to do that, there was a lot of people that don't want to see any change on Beacon Hill. They like the status quo, they like the way things are going, and they would much rather just raise taxes than to really roll up their sleeves and get to the bottom of where is our money going right now. Since I left office almost 8 years ago, our state budget has gone up by like $10 billion, and that's a lot. I mean, when you and I are out spending our budget, we can't just ask for a raise and keep spending. We have to cut back and see where we a lot of things that Jeff stood up and fought for, and I was standing alongside of him with a few other Republicans on Beacon Hill, and I thought that he brought some really great ideas. And as governor, I think he would be able to execute those ideas and really fight, be kind of a backstop for the values that we believe in. The state is going to run, no matter who's in the corner office. But there are some issues that really need to be stood up and fought for, and those are things like our constitutional rights, parents' voices, having a voice in their kids' education, and and fighting for transparency and accountability. For instance, one good example is there was recently a law passed that would give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants in Massachusetts. And despite the fact that most of polling shows that most people in Massachusetts don't agree that driver's licenses should be given to people who come here illegally. The legislature just went ahead and passed that anyway. They have been working on this for a long time. When I was in office back in 2013, 2014, this came up in a committee hearing. And at that time, Jeff Deal had introduced a bill that would actually not just put a band-aid on this problem, which I think this is what this uh, law would do. It just put a band-aid on it and make us become a magnet state for more illegal immigration. But the problem is that our immigration system is broken. I think Massachusetts only naturalizes something like 1,500 immigrants a year, and people are absolutely welcome to come here and get a better life for their family. But I think we need to fix our immigration process. So Jeff had introduced a bill that would bring that naturalization process back to the states, which is where it had been done before the federal government took it over. And of course, the more you can take the decisions out of the federal government, move them back to the states, the faster things can get done, the easier it is to make changes on things that aren't working. And we could really make a lot of difference in people's lives and not um, have these crazy ideas like rewarding people with driver's licenses for coming here illegally. So it was kind of those common sense things that
Yeah.
that made me think that Jeff would be a great leader.
Yeah, I want to get into some of these issues as we go along, but one final question about the primary specifically. You're facing Kate Campanale, another former state representative,
Hmm.
in the primary on September 6th. What would you say differentiates between you and her as voters, Republican voters, make that decision on September 6th?
Yeah, so I served with Kate for a short time. I really like her. I think she's a great person. She's very nice. We share a lot of the same values. Obviously, we're in the Republican Party for a reason. I think the biggest difference is that although we share those values, I just don't know if she's as willing to stand up and fight for them. She wasn't very outspoken on a lot of issues. There were times that we needed people to stand for roll call votes in order to get bad votes on record so that voters could know how the representatives were voting. And there were people. And I think it's just a matter of whether people want someone who's going to stand up and fight for their rights, or if someone who's more comfortable just kind of going along to get along. And that's nothing personal. That's just the way I feel about it. I feel very passionately about these issues, and I think that at this point, our legislature is a super majority of Democrats, and getting more and more progressive in the legislation that they're pushing forward. And at some point, I think we need to stand up and push back on this a little bit. That's historically seems to be why Massachusetts elects Republicans, as kind of as a counterbalance to our extremely progressive legislature. And the things that are being passed right now are really making a big difference in people's lives. And we need someone that's going to stand up and really fight for the things that are important and the things that are going to preserve our freedoms and our constitutional rights and the way of life that makes America the greatest country on earth to live.
Yeah. Now, there are constitutional roles for the lieutenant governor, of course, filling in for the governor when he or she is not in office or out of town. Also, the lieutenant governor chairs the governor's council and runs those meetings.
Hmm.
We've seen with current administrations, particularly with Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, that she's been that liaison to cities and towns.
Hmm.
How would you see your role as lieutenant governor? Obviously, working with Jeff and his priorities. But how would
Hmm.
you see your role that may be either supporting what's been done in the past or maybe some things that may be different?
Yeah, I think Karen Polito did a really great job reaching out to the municipalities in Massachusetts. She got them to sign that community compact. It really strengthened the relationship between the state government and city government, or city and town government. And I would definitely like to continue that. I think one of the most important things we can do is make sure that the cities and towns are receiving enough local aid so that they don't have to keep raising property taxes or adding extra fees for trash pickup or things like that, because that makes a big difference to people on fixed incomes, to everyone, to working families, to uh, just young people who are trying their best, because renters, even that affects them, because the more you raise property taxes, landlords are only going to eat that cost for so long before they have no choice but to raise the rent. So if we want to talk about the fact that housing and rents are getting out of control, I think that all comes back to in a way spending at the state level. So we definitely want to make sure that our cities and towns are well funded, that we're returning the tax dollars in a way that makes sense for those communities. And also, you mentioned the governor's council. Being a chair of the governor's council, that body is the ones who appoint judges, parole board members, things like that. And I think what we need are judges who have a good understanding of our Constitution. I feel like a broken record, but really, I think a lot of our problems would be solved if we would just follow what our forefathers wrote for us in the Constitution. So I think we need to be appointing judges who have a good understanding and a good interpretation of the Constitution, and who are going to make good decisions. The other thing that kind of an offshoot of this is a lot of people are concerned about gun violence. Well, the thing is that uh, we have laws on the books to prosecute firearms offenses, but if you ask any police officer when they arrest someone on a firearms offense, most of the time they're out on the street again the next day. So we need judges that are willing uh, to dole out a punishment that fits the crime. And I think that will improve the quality of life for a lot of residents in Massachusetts as well if we can get dangerous people off the streets. And so that's an important role of the lieutenant governor.
Now, being a former state legislator, do you feel that you have expertise to help, and Jeff as well, obviously a former state representative, have that relationship with the legislature? If you're elected, a lot has been made over the past 8 years that. Governor Baker did have a good relationship with the legislature. Obviously, you're not going to agree on everything, and when you're
Mm-hmm.
of two parties, you sometimes rarely do. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you foresee that relationship between a deal and an Allen administration working with the legislature?
Yeah, I think that it's not going to be an issue because, like you said, we have that legislative experience. So we do have relationships with some of these legislators. And also, nothing that we want to do is really that crazy. So it's a lot of common sense things that we'd like to do. And I think that if the people, in the leadership and the legislature, if they really want to get good work done for the people of Massachusetts, then we're going to work together. Jeff and I are obviously very willing to do that, and make sure that we can keep Massachusetts running, but without, um, like I said, without infringing on rights, without raising taxes, without we need to make Massachusetts more affordable for the people that live here. So really it's time that the leadership in the legislature does the right thing for the taxpayers. And I think maybe we could bring some of that to light and kind of convince them that the way we're going is not the right direction.
Yeah. I want to get a little more specifically about gateway cities like Fall River, and other cities here, specifically in the South Coast. A lot of times we hear here in Fall River that, well, Boston really doesn't care about us. And I'm sure every other city and town says the same thing across the Commonwealth, right? You should be doing more for our city or our town. From what you know about the South Coast, what could a Deal and Allen administration do to help the people here in the South Coast? We're going to be getting South Coast Rail next year. That could
Hmm.
be an economic development boost.
Hmm.
What other ideas do you feel would be important to gateway cities like Fall River?
Yeah, Peabody was a gateway city as
Yeah.
well. So definitely it's important to make sure that we're supporting those cities that need help. And you mentioned the South Coast Rail. So Jeff has talked about that before. He's in support of that. I think we also want to help out the fishing industry. There's a fishing industry on the South Coast. There's one up here on the North Shore. And a lot of the federal regulation is absolutely killing the fishing industry. And I think that that's it's a tough job, but it's a well-paying job, and it's one that a lot of people go into to provide a good life for their families, but not if we regulate them right out of that. Right out of that. And so the other thing I think is that we unveiled, I guess, a plan for expanding school choice. And I think
Hmm.
if we can help the kids in these gateway cities get better educational opportunities, that's going to help them in the long run as well. We definitely need to focus on some of our workforce development. I think a lot of the programs that we actually have aren't being taken advantage of, and people, there's plenty of jobs right now that are going unfilled, and we can help that fill those jobs and elevate people's quality of life by training them for some of these skilled jobs like being machinists or um, different skilled labor. And I think definitely a focus on vocational schools as well. Not only will that make a workforce that's ready to to enter, sorry, make students that are ready to enter the workforce when they graduate, but also offset some of the need to take out student loans and kind of free our young people of the burden of student debt, because you don't need to go to college and take out all these loans if you are skilled in a trade.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I want to shift a little bit to economic development. In terms of, getting businesses to start up here in Massachusetts, I've talked to a number of candidates on both sides of the aisle
Hmm.
that say that there's too much regulation. There's a lot of
Yeah.
red tape that needs to be
Hmm.
done. One, do you agree with that? And what can you see as a way potentially around that to help promote more businesses, specifically small businesses here in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's something we've been hearing for years from the small business community in Massachusetts, and they wouldn't be saying it if it wasn't happening. I am not a small business owner, but Jeff Deal is, so he understands a lot of what they go through, and especially his business is small. It employs, I think, 12 people, and a lot of times those businesses are the ones that are hit hardest by these regulations because they have probably a very thin margin of profit. And so I think definitely we need to take a look at the regulations and talk to the small business community and see what's not working and try to get rid of some of that. And also look at what is working in other states and maybe use that as a template for what we can implement here to become more business friendly.
Yeah. We only have a few more minutes. I want to give you the opportunity now as we wrap up to speak directly to the Republican voters in Fall River who may be voting on September 6th and why they should consider voting for Leah Cole Allen for Lieutenant Governor.
Yes, thank you. So pretty much, Jeff Deal and I, we're in this race because we care about the issues. We care about what happened to people during the pandemic. I think there was a lot of short-sighted decisions being made. The mental health of our citizens in Massachusetts has been greatly affected. Our children. Jeff Deal and I are the ticket that care about you and you want to protect your wallet, protect your freedoms, protect your children. Really, we want to get government out of your personal life and let it operate in a way that serves you best. We're willing to stand up and fight. We have a track record of fighting against things that would be harmful in the long run to people, and that was evident by our foresight on the automatic gas tax. And we didn't just complain about it or submit an amendment and let it get shot down and say we did something. We actually got out and rolled up our sleeves and did the hard work to get that referendum, and we protected the taxpayers from that. And that's just a small sample of what we would do to work for the people of Massachusetts and make sure that this remains the greatest state to live in, that young families, retired people, small businesses can live and thrive here, and just make sure that we're doing all of that while protecting your rights. So I would
Yeah.
appreciate. It's going to be a close race for lieutenant governor. If you like what you're hearing, you can check out jeffdeal.com or leahcoleallen.com. It has more of our policy, more of the issues, and I would appreciate your vote on September 6th. So thank you so much.
All right. Leah Cole Allen, Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Thank you for your time and speaking to the people of Fall River. And as I said before we started, when you're successful in September, we'll hopefully bring you back between then and the November election. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Great show. Thank you so much.
All right. And thank you for joining us here on FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great day.